Good morning, Tallahassee. It's time to wake up Warchant on 97.9 ESPN Radio. Here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi and Cory Clark.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome on in. It's Wake Up Warchant. I'm Aslan. He is Cory S. Clark. That's right. The long national nightmare has now come to an end. Cory has rejoined force with myself here on the program, of course, brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. Cory, what were the last 72 hours like in your life, man? Can you walk us back through this arduous sort of test of your character and your manhood?
Well, first off, I would like to apologize to you and to the listeners to have, I guess you guys had to be subjected to IRA for way longer than anybody should. And that's my fault because I couldn't answer the bell. So I'd like to apologize to the whole Wake Up Warchant community for making that happen. But what can I do? I can't do anything about my immune system. I somehow got strep throat. I know it's the first time I've been diagnosed with strep throat in my life. Like maybe I had it before and just didn't go to the doctor. But it was rough, Aslan. It was rough. It might have probably it probably would have killed lesser men. I mean, but I'm back at it in just a short week. I'm right back ready to go. It only debilitated me for about 5 days.
And the thing is, you probably dropped like 5 or 6 pounds, and you're much more svelte and fit, and much more of a hot commodity now for Stephanie. So, I mean, there's always a silver lining, right?
Oh no, I just ate Mexican the whole time.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that was how I dealt with strep throat. I ate Mexican.
Do you really feel better though? Like, are you back to like 100%?
Yeah, it was a rough about 48 hours. It was really rough, and it wasn't just the throat. The throat was really bothersome, but it was the I felt weak. I had the shivers. I had a fever, not a bad one, but like a slight fever. And then I never had it. And then the uvula, for people that don't know what the uvula is, it's that little hangy thing in the back of your throat that I'm not sure what it's there for. Maybe to block food. I'm not sure why it's there. It looks like a turkey gobbler thing, but that swelled to about the size of a beach ball. So that was really awesome. Feeling that on my tongue. Every time I swallowed, it was really cool. And that's still not 100%, but it's better. But it's just a little swollen. But again, I don't want to bore everyone with how tough I am. But rest assured, everyone, again, most people would probably still be in the hospital. And here I am doing a radio show a mere 5 days later.
And a day prior to this, you were writing a column again for Warchant.com. A lot of good things happening with Florida State athletics beyond the football field, man. Catch us up.
Yeah, so the men's track team won its first title in 3 years, ACC Outdoor Championship. Now, obviously, it used to be that was just assumed 4, 5, 6 years ago. Florida State was one of, if not the best track programs in the country. They won that thing every year and won it convincingly. And then they took, they had a couple subpar years. So for them to come back and win that was a good sign, really good sign for that program, which is finally entered the rankings again and seems to be in the national discussion again for the first time in a while. The women's tennis team advanced to the Sweet 16 for the first time, or maybe the second time in program history, and did it by beating Florida at Florida, which is always nice.
Suck it!
Yeah, suck that, Gators. You like that? How'd that taste?
Yeah.
And then the big one obviously was the softball team. What a crazy win that was! Being down 4-0 in the sixth inning of a championship softball game is like being down 11-0 in the ninth inning of a baseball. I mean, you just don't come back from that normally. But Florida State did. Florida State's owns this conference and has for years. That was the 5th straight ACC title, and it came because of Anna Shellnut hitting a walk-off 3-run homer with 2 outs. And what was cool about it was that Shellnut was kind of the reason that Pittsburgh had such a big lead in the first place, because she was catching and she let a couple balls get by her that allowed runs to score. And so for her to come back and make amends and have that redemption, that's what makes sports kind of cool.
Redemptive stories are always easy fodder for a columnist, right?
Oh, for sure. Now, I can't fake like I paid that much attention to the softball team at Florida State, so I certainly was going to write a column just on the softball team. But man, they're obviously one of the best teams on campus, and they've been the best team in the ACC for a decade now, maybe the whole time. Like, it's weird that the ACC isn't any better at softball. Did you know Clemson doesn't even have a program?
Really?
Isn't that weird?
I didn't know that.
Like that's so weird that Clemson doesn't have a program, and you'd think that'd be, they treat themselves like an SEC type school, and just odd that they don't have a program at all, and none of the other programs in the conference are apparently very good. So Florida State kind of runs through it every year, but this one was tough. I mean, Pitt was right there. Pitt had the championship won, and then Florida State stole it from them.
And
which kind of sucks for Pitt because that's probably the only way Pitt's going to get into the NCAA tournament was to win the ACC tournament. And they've only been there once in their history. They've never won an ACC championship. And then Florida State, who wins it every year, ripped their hearts out.
Well, in moments like that, I just kind of think about what Thomas Jefferson said, and pretty much it sucks to suck. So, I mean, Pitt will just have to find another way next year to rebound and maybe
that's at the Jefferson Memorial, right? Isn't that one of the inscriptions
next to the Monticello? I think so.
Well, in DC, when you go to the Jefferson Memorial, I can't remember all his speeches that are written and engraved in stone, but I'm pretty sure it sucks to suck is the first one that you see.
Right. Hey, so your friends over on Seminole Headlines, Ira Schofeller, managing editor, and Jeff Cameron, who you can hear 3 to 6 p.m. weekdays right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee. They always give you guff for being, the king of hyperbole. But this Jessie Warren girl, I mean, in terms of like the annals of softball history, she's, I don't want to say she's on the Mount Rushmore, but she's special, isn't she?
Oh yeah, she's the best player. She's the best hitter anyway in school history. Her numbers are ridiculous. She might be the best hitter in Florida. It's not. This isn't hyperbole. She is the best hitter in Florida State history, baseball or softball. Her numbers are. I'm telling you, man. Her numbers are ridiculous. And I wrote a story about her last year when I was working at the Democrat. And you know what I did? I talked to. You remember Alex Faedo? He pitched for Florida last year, and he was like the number 3 pick in the draft. Well, anyway, growing up. Him and it's Jessie Warren now, but I keep calling her Jessica because that's what she was the first 3 years she was here, but now she's Jessie. Anyway, he was teammates with her on Little League baseball teams and travel ball teams and all-star teams all the way up till they were like 13. And so I talked to him about her, and he goes, oh yeah, she was our best hitter, and she was also our best pitcher until we were like 13. And then the boys kind of got more physically developed and they started throwing harder. But he goes, oh yeah, she batted third or cleanup in our lineup all the time, all growing up from the age of like 8 to the age of 13.
Baseball?
Yeah, baseball.
Wow.
And then the first time she played softball, she had just wrapped up a travel baseball game. She was walking. I think it was Sherman Johnson. You remember him, the kid that played at Florida State. His dad is a big time softball coach in the Tampa area, or was. And he saw her walking. I don't know, the car, just walking around to the concession stand. He's like, "Hey, Jessie, we need somebody to play third because our third baseman's not here. She's sick. Can you play this? Can you play for us?" It was softball. She'd never played softball. She's like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll give it a try." The first batter of the game hits a ground ball to her, and she throws it underhand to first base because she thought that's how every throw had to be. She had never watched a game of softball, didn't care about it, but the first batter of the game, it hits a ball right to her, and she underhands it to first because she thought that's what it was. And then obviously, it kind of. I'll be honest. I'll go back to Thomas Jefferson's quote a little bit. It sucks that girls don't get a chance to play baseball more often. That they're funneled in. And it worked out for Florida State for sure. But Jessica Warren was a baseball player that had to play softball because she ran out of options to keep playing the sport the pseudo sport that she liked on a diamond with a bat. She had to start playing softball. And I wish there was a way for more girls to play baseball. Now I'm off my soapbox a little bit, but girls and boys play the same sport in basketball, golf, tennis, swimming, any sport you can think of. It's the exact same sport, except for whatever reason, baseball and softball. And they're not the same. They're close, but they're not that close. They're different sports. But anyway, yeah, Jessica Warren is one of the best athletes in Florida State history, without a doubt. Just an unbelievable hitter. Are
you trying to take down the patriarchy through this program of ours? Is that what you're trying to do right now, Cory?
I'm just trying, man. I'm just trying. It's just for whatever reason, girls were told to play softball way back when. They weren't told to go play basketball with on a half court. Actually, they were. Back in the 50s and 60s. It's just and softball is a fine sport in its own right, but it's a different sport than baseball. And it would be cool if girls got to play baseball. That's all. Brady had a girl on his baseball team this year on his Little League team, and she was really good, and she doesn't like softball. But everybody keeps asking her parents, hey, when are you going to get her into softball? And they're like, well, she doesn't like softball. So until she does, we're going to keep her in baseball. Anyway, sorry about that. I hijacked the show.
No, let's go ahead. Let's just keep it, white chromosome centric. I think that's what differentiates the two of us. How was your Mother's Day, man?
Good. Got to see Shanna. Made Brady. Well, I bought her headphones that she wanted, and then Brady made her a card. So I offered to cook her breakfast. Go over there and cook her breakfast. Well, I thought that was nice. Me and Brady could make some eggs or bacon or something, but we instead went to Publix and just got her a muffin, which worked out just as well. And then, I got to see my mom, who is 75 years old and has been my mom for almost 43 years now. As everyone that listens to this show, she did a bang up job raising me into the man that can, only be out for 5 days with strep throat. I mean, what else? What other evidence do you need of the job she did?
Let me ask you something, man. I thought about this. So this happened last night. I'm with my buddy. He owns a house. He is divorced with a daughter, and he has a girlfriend who has a son, and the girlfriend lives with him. So like the girlfriend and her son lives with him. He doesn't have full-time custody of his daughter, but we're getting ready to go out to grab some beers. And he's like talking to her kind of about, we're going to grab some beers with Aslan. Tomorrow I'm going to do this, and the other kind of just stuff around the house. And she was like, well, I was kind of expecting to have breakfast in bed tomorrow since it's Mother's Day. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, we can do that. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm like, she's not like your wife, and she's not the mother of your child. Like, I don't know, like, how much do you have to go out of your way? I mean, this is obviously different. You and Shanna were married, and that's like your son. So I guess I can kind of see that. But I was like, dang, man, like, don't let her put you in a corner like that, man. But I think I'm in the minority on that, probably.
Well, so the girlfriend lives with them, though?
Yes.
And the kid, the kid lives with them too, obviously?
Yes.
I mean, that's different. If you're living under the same house, I think that's, you celebrate her being a mom, even though she's not the mom to your bloodline. I still think that's, being a mom. Hey, ladies, I know we got lady listeners out there. Being a mom ain't easy. And so you get the one day where you get to, shower them with affection for a few minutes with a bad breakfast. That's the least you can do, right? But I get what you're saying. It's a little different because it's not his child.
It was kind of the way she said it too. I'm like, he's letting you live in this very nice house in a very good school district.
All right.
Well, no, I'm not saying like she should be like bowing down and everything, but it's like, I think, the other 364 days out of the year, he's doing a great job of helping you be a mother. Like, I don't think you need to make him feel extra sort of motivated or indebted to do something for you on that day. I don't know. That's kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but obviously that's why I'm single. I'm going to die a lonely, grumpy man. But check it out.
But you won't have to worry about Mother's Day.
Exactly, right? On a good note, so check this out. My whole buddy who set everything up with us to go to the Masters, he works for Mercedes-Benz, obviously. Well, not obviously, but, that's, I mentioned that before, and that's how we got the kind of good hookup over at Augusta. Well, he gave me like an employee discount code. My mom, bless my mom, man. My mom has been such a frugal driving force in my family. So my mom is like the breadwinner in my family. So I grew up with a strong female presence in my life. I love my father too, but yeah, my mom made more money than my dad, but she's always been really, just everything's always been done very economically. So she finally splurged and wanted to treat herself, and she wanted to buy a Mercedes-Benz. So my buddy gave me the code. So I went with her as like her Mother's Day gift to like help her, I don't know, bargain or what have you. I don't know. I've never bought a car either. My dad's always handled that stuff. I just cut the checks to my pops. But anyhow, so I'm there. So everybody thinks that I am buying my mother a Mercedes for Mother's Day. And they have all these, quote, product concierge young employees, like these females that are just smoke shows, as the kids would call it. They're extremely attractive. So they're all looking at me and sizing me up like, look at him. Like he's buying his mom a Mercedes for Mother's Day. He's fantastic. And for like a brief minute, I felt what it was like to be just like maybe Cory Clark, just make, women's teeth sweat and be able to, melt a cheese sandwich from across the room. But then I had to break it to him that I'm just here for moral support. And then things kind of deteriorated from there.
I don't feel why did you have to break it to him?
I just don't like to live a lie, man. I'm all about transparency.
I don't think that's true. I think you could have made that. They would have never been the wiser. And not only do you look like a devoted son, which is, I'm assuming, a huge turn on to women, that you're a devoted son to your mom and you treat her well, but do you have the kind of money to just buy your mom a Mercedes? I mean, that's win-win. You couldn't have you could have walked in there with like two puppies and a cute baby and done any better than you did, that you would have looked right in that moment. It sounds to me like you kind of screwed that one up a little bit. You could have milked that one.
Hashtag my own worst enemy. Hey, man, let's talk about football. Let's take a break. Right. We'll be right back. Aslan and Cory reunited on Wake Up Warchant. It's ESPN 97.9 Tallahassee. Coming right back after this.
You're locked in to Wake Up Warchant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Welcome on back, folks. It's 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee. I'm Aslan. He is Cory Clark. This is Wake Up Warchant, brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. All right, Cory. So the good thing about working for Warchant.com, obviously, I could do the whole show talking about how good it is, but it's to be able to cover the team that I grew up rooting for, that I went to college rooting for, and that most of all my friends grew up rooting for. So whenever I do come home and I see them, the first thing is I was going, how's Tallahassee? How you liking the new job? How's everything going? How's the Tinder game? Things like that. But then they always want to know, how does the team look? How'd the team look this spring, Aslan? What do you think? So you and I, we kind of try to dive further into things on the show daily and talk about our observations, our opinions on things. But how do you describe to people who know what you do when they come up to you, like, hey, Cory, how you doing, man? How'd the team looking? When you think about the team, how do you describe it to the layman who comes up to you and asks you for your opinion on things?
Yeah, that's weird. I do get that a lot. As anybody that does this for a living gets that. And, I'm honest with them. I'm like, man, I don't know. I said, they looked fun in the spring. And I said, they looked fun in the spring game, but I don't know if they're, what they're going to look like in the fall. I said, I think they have a chance to have a pretty good year. And then I start talking about my Brady and the All-Star team.
Right. Good pivot.
Yeah, I got to pivot to get to stuff I really want to talk about. No, and then I say, but man, and then the question inevitably goes after that to what's Willie like? At least for me, it has been in the last few months. That's the question I've gotten the most, other than how's the team look, is what's Willie like? Or do you miss Jimbo? And some people say that knowingly, you kind of laughingly. But yeah, that's the question I get a lot, is what's Willie like? And I tell him the truth, that he's been, he seems like a really kind of down to earth, normal, cool person. And the kids, and from what we gather, the kids really like playing for him, and the people in the department really enjoy working with him, all that stuff. So that's kind of what I get more than, or as much as how's the team looking.
My brother is the only one who asked me that. He's just like, what's Willie like? I'm like, dude, he's a legitimately cool dude. I would probably like to play football for him if I played football. But everybody else just wants to know what the team is like. And I don't know, part of it, I feel like I need to shovel them some optimism and hope and everything, because nobody wants to hear negative things. But there's not necessarily anything negative to report on the team. But I think, when you just distill it down, I really avoid talking about the quarterbacks. I'm like, we're going to be able to run the ball really well. We just have to. And I feel like if that offensive line does their job, we'll run the ball well. And defensively, I'm like, it just can't be that much worse, I don't think. And that's pretty much what I give them on the explanation. That seems to be good enough. They're like, all right, cool. Then they walk away like they feel like better about it, even though I feel like that's not selling them a whole lot of hope and glory. Yeah,
but how can you? I mean, it's a 7-6 team that was 3-6 at one point. I mean, we'll see. There's nothing that we know. It's not like, even going into last year, we thought we knew that team, but you don't know, and you certainly don't know in May. I think they'll be. And the one thing I do tell people is I think they'll be more fun to watch. I said I don't know how much better the record is going to be, but they'll be more fun to watch. It's not going to be as soul sucking to watch the quarterback continue to point out the safeties until there's 3 on the play clock. All that stuff. It'll be more fun. It'll be fast tempo, and I think we'll enjoy the product more. I just don't know how many more wins you'll get to enjoy.
And a lot of people are like my brother's kind of like the barometer I use on a lot of these things. And he's just like, well, the schedule's going to be tough. So, I think we'll be all right. But and you say that, and so does Ira. I'm the only one that I feel like I'm not. And I know a lot of the folks who leave comments for us point out to the schedule. Again, I'm just, I think if it's going to take time, obviously, for all this to develop. But I mean, no one's thankfully asked me to give them a prediction on the record. But I just feel like if what they're going to do is streamline things, make these guys think less, play faster, play with more instinct, well, then you're going to out talent most everybody on that schedule. So you should be back in that sort of 10-win conversation, at the end of November.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's May. We still got 4 months until the season starts, or 3 months, 3.5 months, something like we still got like 13 Saturdays left before college football. 12 Saturdays left until college football. But it's just hard to know. I think that they will have more talent than the teams they face, and I think they'll, depending on breaks, because they don't have that much talent that they're just going to show up and beat these teams on the schedule, because the schedule is that tough. The schedule is tough in the sense that if you don't play well, there's 5 or 6 different games you could lose if you don't play well. You probably should win them all. You won't, because that's not how football works, because you don't always play well. But there's literally there's 6 or 7 teams on that schedule that if you play poorly or turn the ball over 4 times, you're going to lose. So I think the difference between an 8-win team and an 11-win team is just going to be a few breaks here and there. They'll have a chance to win 11 games, because I don't foresee them getting blown out in any of their losses. You know what I mean? Where they're just they're outmatched or outmanned. That's not going to happen. It's just going to be a matter of a few plays in some of these games where they either make the play or they don't, or they get a bad break or a good break. And that'll be the difference between 8 and 11 wins. They have the capability to win 11 games. They have the capability to win 8. It just depends on some breaks and some turnovers is the way I see it. They're not a guaranteed 11-win team by any means. I think they're better than an 8-win team, but I could also see that happening if they get a few bad breaks in some of these close games, because I feel like there's 4 or 5 games that'll be close. You know, we've talked long, and we've talked about how, and I think this is true, I think Florida State is going to start blitzing teams more regularly. Like you'd see that with Oregon, right? Like Oregon would go 8-4, but 6 of their wins would be by 50 points. So I think that will happen, but I also think so they're going to have 6 or 7 wins, in my opinion, 6 wins where they win by 30 points. It's those other 6 games that are close. Well, how are they going to do there? You know, are they going to get the breaks or not? Are they going to play well in those big moments or not? That's what we'll learn about them. But I think they'll completely overrun some teams because of the speed that they play at, the talent they have in the backfield, and just the pace that they play with. I think they'll completely overrun teams in the third quarter, and that's something we haven't seen here in 5 years, really.
Yeah, actually, my buddy who's got the girlfriend who lives with him or whatever, he's of all the score posters to have framed in his house, you know those things they hand out after a big win where they screen print it. He's got the 77-17 like NC State beatdown score printed out.
From like 1995.
Yeah. That's the one he has. I'm like, very nice.
Well, that was that game was. I remember that game. They had a few that year in '95 where they scored. I think they put up over 60 like 3 or 4 times in that season, because that's when they had Cannell, they had Cooper and E.G. Green. They should have had Randy Moss. He was redshirting, which is insane to think about. That offense with Randy Moss, because it already led the nation in scoring with Cannell and Warwick Dunn and Rock Preston and those guys, and they didn't even use Randy Moss.
What could have been,
man,
right?
I feel like, number one, I get that he was on a no-strike policy, but come on, man, it was weed. What are we doing? And also, he shouldn't have redshirted. I know that was like the what Bowden had to do with the that's what he said with for the president to agree to take him, was he had to tell him that he'd redshirt. But, man, after the second game, fake an injury to someone. Say Wayne Messam, be like, hey, look, Prez, Wayne Messam sprained his ankle. We gotta play Moss. We got to. And they would have they're not losing at the Swamp to Florida. They're not losing they're certainly not losing at Virginia that year if they have Randy Moss. I mean, they're just not. They had 2 plays to get in the end zone from the 3-yard line. You're just tossing it up to that dude, and the game's over. I mean, so anyway, that was I think they should have tried to they should have just let Randy Moss stay, as long as he wasn't obviously a violent criminal. Because I have my, you know me, I have my standards. I want to win, of course, but I have my standards. But as long as you're not a violent criminal, and he wasn't, and he, I don't think he really got in any trouble after the one thing he did here or in Tallahassee with the getting caught with weed, which violated his probation. But after, he's playing. He's playing. If he's not a menace to society, he's on my team scoring 20 touchdowns a year.
Maybe if he's playing, he doesn't even get in trouble. Maybe he'd be so occupied with his craft, he wouldn't have been, sneaking around with Mary. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, man, those are great questions. But there's a chance that because Florida State essentially played in the national championship game 95, 96, 97. Not 95, but they would have beaten Virginia, and I think they would have beaten Florida in 95 if they had Randy Moss. There's a chance if they have Randy Moss is such a game changer for real. I think they win the national championship in 95, 96, and 97 with him on the team.
Gosh.
I don't know how you could – they almost won it without him. Imagine that offense with Peter Warwick Dunn, those guys, and imagine with throwing maybe the second-best receiver in the history of the sport on the team. They could not be covered. I mean, it boggles the mind to think about that. Danny Cannell probably would have won a Heisman.
You just want to ruin everybody's Monday, don't you?
I'm just saying, guys, let Randy Moss play. That would have been literally, they would have won the national championship every year. There's zero chance they wouldn't have won it in 97, 96, or 90. They just would, yeah. They would have beaten Florida so bad in 96 with Randy. You know that game they won 24-21?
Yeah.
Florida was number one. If Randy Moss was on that team, they would have beaten them 41-21. He's good. He would have been good for 2 touchdowns a game because he was simply uncoverable. So anyway,
they hung 70 on Duke that season. They hung 77 on NC State. They hung 72 on Wake, and then a paltry 59 against Maryland.
That was with Randy Moss redshirting.
Golly.
I'm just saying, man. That's 3 national championships. Florida State would have 6 national championships right now if they let Randy Moss stay in school.
Yeah. Hey, let's keep walking down memory lane, but let's take a break right here on Wake Up Warchant. We'll be back with more, myself and Cory, right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio right after this.
The Sod Cemetery, Osceola and Renegade, and of course, the War Chant. These are great traditions known to all Seminole fans. If you are a card-carrying, garnet and gold-wearing Nole, don't you deserve a site that is truly dedicated to covering FSU sports? Warchant.com's staff has over 50 years of experience covering the Seminoles. Warchant.com is the only FSU outlet with a full-time recruiting analyst in Tallahassee. Plus, it's the only site with a full-time videographer and a daily podcast, 100% dedicated to FSU sports. Why act like Gators and settle for second best? Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
It's Wake Up Warchant. I'm Aslan. He is Cory. This show brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. This show is on podcast form wherever you would like to download it. And it's also right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio, weekdays, 6 to 7 p.m. A programming note, might be missing some shows this week. Spoiler alert, Michael Langston and I are hitting back on the road. The people have spoken, Cory. The people want more. So Michael and myself are going to get into a car, and we're going to go to a different state in our fabulous union to catch up with some recruits. Not going to quite say who. We want to keep a little bit of the surprise, but potential for some midweek absences of shows in your podcast, folks. Be prepared for it. Don't guilt us. We have a lot going on. Stop guilting us. Stop.
We're trying our best, but we got other jobs too that we're trying to perform.
No, absence makes the heart grow fonder, I think, too. So like when people see that we're not there on Wednesday or whatever, they might appreciate it more on Thursday. So it's just all psychological warfare. You're just falling right into the trap, people.
It's like Chick-fil-A not being open on Sundays.
Bingo. Perfect. All right, Cory. So I had all these great topics that I spoke with in length with Ira with over the week. One of the things I didn't go over with him, which has nothing to do with really anything we've spoken about, but it's just one of these things I'm going to go to because it's May and what are we going to talk about? And people want to hear about football. And I don't know how much like enthusiasm, obviously the fan base is feeling right now. How much of it's directly tied to obviously what Willie has done here in the short amount of time he's been the head coach and just generating more interest and seeming to be so much more engaged and passionate about the job that he has. But, with you guys on headlines and Jeff Cameron, again, 3 to 6 o'clock weekdays right here on 97.9 ESPN Radio, the lost decade thing, in terms of a one singular season, despite all the ups and downs towards the end of Bobby Bowden's, illustrious career, like was, to my friends, they keep asking me about games. They want to come up and stay with me in Tallahassee to watch a game. To them, I don't know. It feels like last season never even, I don't want to say it didn't happen because it did and it hurt. But the fact that last season was such an abject disaster right from the jump, like, is there any one, just that the feeling that the season just left so much emptiness, I would say, like in the hearts of Florida State fans. How much do you think that contributes to the enthusiasm, not only around Willie, but also people wanting to come up to you and find out what the team is going to look like this season? Because it felt like they were robbed of an entire football season in 2017.
That probably plays into it more than anything. I think even if they had gone 9-3 or 9-4, 10-3, but still looked the way they looked, and everything was a struggle. I just think people are excited about him. I know the record. People want to bounce back from a 7-6 season because they haven't been used to those in a while. But I think more than anything, it's just the guy. I think the guy has rejuvenated everything, and I think it had grown stale with the former guy. Whether he was going to keep churning out 10-win seasons or not, which I know is odd to hear, but I just think it had gotten stale with him. The message wasn't there anymore. It wasn't resonating. You watch the same offense for a decade and 11 years, and maybe only 3 of those years were they actually fun to watch. Not that they weren't successful, but again, I think fun has something to do with it. When you're at Florida State, man, it's a fun program that made its bones, that made its name by being a fun offense, and it just wasn't fun for the majority of Jimbo's 11 years here. That doesn't mean it wasn't successful and productive, but outside of like 2009 when they had to score a bunch of points, 2013, some Dalvin Cook runs, it wasn't all that enjoyable, and I think they just feel like this is going to be a lot more enjoyable. I think more. I really do. I think the guy's personality and the guy's pace of play and what offense he's bringing here, I think all that plays into Florida State fans being so excited for a fresh start.
Like when you have a preseason ranked number 3 team and you're murmuring about, Atlanta to Atlanta, you're going to start your season in Atlanta, end it in Atlanta, and then your season ends in Doak Campbell Stadium at, time of death, 2:13 p.m. against NC State in September. Like, does that not just create a whole nother level of dissatisfaction and sort of, hope and, I don't know, excitement for what's to come?
Are you saying like what sucked the energy out of the fan base, or what brought it back?
I mean, just like last year. I mean, I was just talking about my friend about it last night when we were playing Golden Tee, which he smoked me in, by the way. And like, he thinks he's better at golf than me now because he beat me in Golden Tee, but I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But it just, as a fan, I was joking about absence makes the heart grow fonder. That's the thing about football. It's that you get that 4-month sugar rush, and then the other 8 months you're sitting there jonesing and you're listening to a podcast trying to get every single bit of information over spring practice from a bald guy and a guy who's losing his hair rapidly. That, like, I don't know how much of the fact that, like, it felt like 2017, how can you when you squander opportunities as a fan base? I know Florida State is used to success. Teams, and I would always joke around with guys in Alabama about how upset can you be when you lose to Clemson in a national title game when you won the year before and you'll probably win the following year, which is what ended up happening. But like when you have those things in place, like a preseason ranked number 3 team, and you feel like everything is going to go to the moon, and like you don't even get off the launch pad in September, like how much that just affects. I guess maybe, let's look at in terms of how excited they are for the new guy, because that makes the divorce from the previous guy that much more easy, does it not?
Yes, and of course it does. And I also think that part of it was once Francois was laying on that turf, and every Florida State fan knew, hey, who's our backup? We don't have a backup. Like every Florida State fan, when they saw him on the turf not moving, thought, there goes the season. And they were right. Whether that was the right thought in the moment, it didn't have to be. Number one, you could have had a quarterback that was ready to play, that was groomed, and not a guy that had been on campus for 2 months. But either way, the season was essentially lost after Francois went down, and everybody knew it. Like after about 3 quarters of that NC State game, really the third quarter when the offense was just a train wreck, you're like, okay, well then what good can come of this season? I think it felt like it was just you're playing out a string, because your coach and the coaching staff had somehow put in place a quarterback depth chart with no depth. And so that kind of hampered the whole season. And there also wasn't a lot to look forward to each week. Like at least the year before you had Dalvin Cook. Like, oh, I can't wait to see what he does this week. There wasn't a lot to bring you to, there wasn't a lot of exciting, fun things to think about when you were watching Florida State. Like, oh, I mean, Cam Akers, sure, but I want to see Jock Patrick get a 9-yard bruising run. Or I want to see, on tape, maybe catch a touchdown if he's thrown the ball. And I want to see Tamori and Terry stand on the sidelines. Like, there wasn't a lot to draw you to those games. They just kind of felt just meandering and boring. And And it wasn't, again, even sometimes even when you're having a bad season, there's still stuff to hang on to. Like, oh, he's fun to watch. He's fun to watch. The offense is fun anyway. I know we're losing games 41-40, but at least it's fun to watch our offense. Maybe our defense will come around. There really wasn't any of that. And until the end of the season, Derwin James wasn't even that guy. He started playing much better the second half of the season, but the first half, he was just a guy kind of out there. So, at least in my opinion, I mean, he didn't make those jaw-dropping, game-changing plays. So
Tell that to Duke. Tell that to Duke, Corey.
Sure.
Duke felt the wrath of Derwin James.
And even Duke and Wake Forest, even those wins were just like dental appointments. And there was nothing fun or redeeming about them. And I think that's what makes this so. Florida State fans didn't have a game to look forward to after the Alabama game, in my opinion, because number one, they had 3 weeks off because of the hurricanes, so that didn't help the flow of the season. And then they come back and immediately lose at home to NC State, and a kid, whatever he did to their field, I can't remember what, spit on their field,
spat on the head.
And then you're like, okay, man, we can't even beat NC State at home, so this season's a wrap. Season's a wrap. 2 games in. Yeah. So you win a whole season without having anything to look forward to. So I think now it's not just that it's the new coach and the new offense. That helps. But you just went through a whole 2017 season where you were almost kind of waiting for it to be over as soon as it started. As soon as DeAndre was on the turf, it's like, okay, well, let's get ready for 18.
Gosh. How about this with Derwin? I saw Ira did a kind of write-up on all the rookies that are now reported to their teams in the NFL. And, with Derwin, I'm obviously hoping that everything works out for the best with him. It sounds like that's really a good fit for him in San Diego with Gus Bradley being the defensive coordinator. And obviously what he did at, helping kind of be the architect with Pete Carroll of what they were able to do in Seattle for so many years defensively. Feels like it's a kind of a good fit for him. It makes me think back to, when Jalen left, everybody talked about Jalen was going to be a first-round pick, and you're like, well, I certainly hope so. And he tested fantastic at the combine. But then you think about, well, there's not a lot that he, did in Tallahassee where you're just like, dang, sure loved him. It was a part. I don't know. Can we say he was an important part of the 2013 defense? I mean, he started. Okay, all right, that's fair, fine. So what's going to be a more, I don't want to say damning, but what would give you a less sort of diplomatic look at Charles Kelly's tenure at Florida State? If Derwin ends up being kind of everything that Jalen's been thus far and just is out there making plays and just flashing on the screen every Sunday to whoever's watching Red Zone or whatever NFL game that Derwin's going to be on, or if you see a guy like Josh Sweat be the guy that kind of flashes, or either of those two guys, like, is there any more like indictment on Charles Kelly and the way he ran defense, or were the last 3 years kind of enough?
I think those were enough. And again, the last year his defense wasn't bad at all by any measure. They were a pretty good to good defense. They weren't great and they weren't dominant. And after the Alabama game, we thought, oh boy, this is an incredible defense. Oh, yeah. And it turned out it was just a pretty good defense, nothing special. And so I don't think it'll be the Josh Sweat thing again because of the injury. I just think we never saw the real Josh Sweat. So if he turns out to be a freak at the next level, getting 11 sacks a season, I don't blame Charles Kelly for that. I blame the knee injury, the knee brace, whatever the rehab was that didn't take, where all of a sudden against Florida, he played against Florida and he didn't look like the kid he looked like 2 months later at the combine or 3 months later at the combine. For whatever reason, in that 2 or 3 month stretch, he became a much better athlete. So anyway, I think that if Derwin becomes like an Ed Reed, or a Sean Taylor at the next level, where he's not only playing well but making plays all over the field and creating havoc all over the field, I think that wouldn't be a great look for Charles Kelly, because he didn't really do that at Florida State. He just didn't. He didn't create a lot of havoc at Florida State. He made plays. He did his assignment. He was really good, and I think he's going to be a really good pro. But he was never the guy that changed games. With 2 or 3 of those just game-changing Sean Taylor, Ed Reed type of plays, Honey Badger type of plays. He just wasn't. He wasn't that guy, and he never really got a chance to be at Florida State. So if he turns into that guy where he's utilized better at the NFL level, whether it's closer on blitzes or covering guys, however he gets utilized, and if he becomes a an All-Pro, an 8-time All-Pro. That'll be a little bit of an indictment because we never really saw that guy at Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, I asked this because of the latest round of coaches tweeting out former players that they shook their hand with and had a cup of coffee at their previous stop and say that they developed a guy. And I think Charles Kelly's face is plastered on a Tennessee one where they spelled Ronald Derby.
Right.
Not to be confused with Ronald Darby.
Right.
Darby. And I'm just like, man.
Either one. No, don't confuse them with either of those guys.
And I guess hopefully they're taking Jalen's getting, the credit's going to Jeremy Pruitt, because I guess you could argue that the best sort of production or flash you saw to Jalen outside of that 2014 game down in Miami was probably his freshman year when Jeremy Pruitt was calling the shots. So,
Pruitt got him to Florida State. He had a really good relationship with Pruitt.
Yeah.
And I really think I feel like Ramsey probably would have gone to USC because he wasn't considered in Alabama, I don't think. It was between USC and Florida State. But he had a really good relationship with Pruitt. I think this was 5 years ago now, people. Bear with me. But I do think that once Pruitt got the job in Tallahassee, that was kind of the censure for Jalen to come to Tallahassee. So I do think Pruitt played a very big part in him coming to Florida State. But did he develop him? I mean, he worked with him for 3 months. So, and I don't know, again, Ramsey had a fine career. He was an All-American. He was a cornerback and he's a safety and he was good at both. He didn't get a chance to make
and everything else.
They never get a chance to make a ton of plays, especially his last year because he was just a corner and just teams didn't throw to him. And if they did, it was an incomplete pass. But he did drop that interception against Oregon that would have been a pick six that would have changed the whole complexion of the game. But, what are you going to do?
I'm looking at his Rivals profile right now. The only other two places that show that he took an official visit to, get this, Florida and Mississippi State.
For Jalen Ramsey?
Yeah. But I remember Southern Cal being in the mix too, but that's bizarre. Like those are the only two schools where it shows, because every school's got a check mark next to it for an offer, obviously, right? Like everybody and their mother offer Jalen Ramsey. But in terms of him having taken an official visit, like his official visit to Florida State was January 11th, people. So
after Pruitt. I think Pruitt got hired maybe a week before that or 2 weeks, whenever the Pruitt was hired. And then, he came but I don't know why everybody thought USC was one of his top contenders. Come on, man. Florida State's not going to lose a recruit to Mississippi State unless the kid's from Mississippi. But that's odd that's odd that he visited there.
Didn't lose Cam Akers to Ole Miss. So, man, we'll go wherever we want. We just can't go to Alabama.
And also in Jalen's defense, I've always said, if I get a free trip to Starkville, man, I'm taking it. I'm always taking it. It's Hawaii, L.A., maybe Seattle for me, Chicago, and then Starkville. Those are the 5 places I'm always going to want to go if people are willing to pay for me.
Hashtag Real America. Hashtag
sure.
Hail State or whatever they call it out there. All right, man. Let's wrap things up here on Wake Up Warchant. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee.
You're locked in to Wake Up Warchant on 97.9 ESPN Radio.
It's Aslan and Cory and Aslan. We'll do Clark and Hudjavandy. We'll do alphabetical by last name, Cory. You're welcome. It's Wake Up Warchant. It's 97.9 ESPN Radio in Tallahassee, brought to you by For the Table Hospitality. All right, so baseball-wise, the Noles coming in a little bit hot here towards the season end. One final weekend awaits with NC State before postseason play begins. I know the sort of argument about, using your sort of, I don't want to call it preseason schedule for baseball, but your prior to tournament or your conference play kind of really starting. A lot of teams, especially Florida State, will they'll do the kind favor of bringing teams from up north down there, come to Hauser, experience great hospitality in the Animals, and then we'll whip up on you really quickly and get some wins and get ready for, when the season really starts mattering. Like, what are your thoughts on them bringing in Mount St. Mary's for these 4 games they did this past weekend? I'm kind of the, especially because they struggled the offense to me, I don't know where it ranks statistically right now in the nation, but I felt the offense, they've been putting up runs, but I feel like every time I watch them play, it's due to errors and pass balls and all sorts of crazy things. So to give them at least one final kind of tomato can before things get really serious, I was kind of a fan of. It was good to see guys like Jackson, Luke, and Cal start slugging the ball too.
Yeah, I don't know if you need that big a can. Mount St. Mary, Florida State won 22-0 on Sunday. Swept them on
pitch better than Cory.
Well, hey, man. I mean, they're doing what they can in the Northeast Conference with Mount St. I don't even know where Mount St. Mary's is. Pennsylvania, maybe.
I'll check it.
But man, I guess it is good to it's always good to feel good about yourself. And certainly the whole lineup should be feeling good about itself right now. Mendoza finally hit a couple balls out of the park again, or hit a ball hard, hit another ball over the fence, hit another one against the fence. Luke hit home runs. Raleigh hit 2 or 3 home runs. Cabanal hit a grand slam and had 5 hits.
Good for him. Good for Kyle.
Yeah, so because Applin got hurt. So
that's not.
There was he has a quad injury, so they just rested him. But I don't know how much good it does you when you got NC State coming up next. But again, confidence is a big deal. I would think maybe you could schedule somebody that could at least stay on the field with you. That isn't so. I mean, they would have been, they'd have been better off having just 4 scrimmages. They would have got, I think, more out of having 4 scrimmages. The competition obviously would have been better than what they did. So, but it is what it is. You got to play these teams. They knew that we've known all along this series was coming. It's the penultimate series of the regular season. You have to have something in between finals and graduation, and then that last regular season series. So they gave Mount St. Mary's a check to come down here and get their brains beat in. I think they gave up, they might have scored 50-something runs in 4 games or 60 runs. Who knows? None of them were competitive. Some of the play was kind of embarrassing, to be honest with you. But, hey, 22-0's fun, and it's always good for guys to raise their average and see balls go over the fence. That'll probably help them come this weekend, maybe. Or they'll be brought back to reality when they face actual real pitching again.
I like the
2 ways it could go.
Yeah. I mean, I got you. I like to think of it as just peaking at the right time, but that's where you and I sort of disagree. But it's fine.
But I did think they played good. I thought they played well at Clemson. I know they lost the middle game. They got blown out in the middle game. Carp didn't pitch well, but I thought they played well in the game they won at Clemson, and then they played well in the game they lost on the walk-off. I mean, some of that's just bad luck. A kid made a great catch to rob them of the lead, and then a kid had a walk-off in the 9th inning. Clemson's a good team, so they should be feeling pretty good about the way they're playing. They won 1 at Clemson. They could have won 2, and then they just not only won 4 games against Mount St. Mary's, but burned the mountain to the ground. So maybe they feel good. They should feel good against NC State. We'll see how long that lasts.
I think there's a lot of focus. I think there's more focus, and I don't know if it's fair or not, on the pitching staff and whether or not, because I guess that's just consistently been thought of as the bugaboo for Florida State the last, 8 to 10 years or what have you. I just felt like the offense really hasn't kind of pulled their weight. So it's good to see them, despite subpar, competition, kind of elevate their play or at least elevate their batting average. I think ultimately with this pitching staff, I've mentioned it back and forth, obviously now a bunch of times. I think we really underestimated, obviously, how big of an impact it was going to be losing Tyler Holton. But I feel like there's at least 4 guys. I feel like now you can probably bring out of the bullpen. I mean, if they're going to keep Cole in the weekend rotation, and you have Drew and let's just say Andrew Karp, those are your 3 guys. I feel really good about Van Eyck coming out. I think Kwiatkowski's actually been doing quite well. I thought he's been pretty solid coming out of the bullpen lately. Scalaro obviously has been another, kind of, good sort of shot in the arm for them as a true freshman. So I think, the easy thing is to say that the pitchers need to come in there and shut everybody down. But I just feel like I think it's an easier sort of sell to have these guys start swinging the bats better and get more runs on the board.
Yeah, I mean, they do need the offense to come around a little bit. Like I said, I think the offense has been playing better lately. Raleigh has really hit the ball well. I think he's their leading hitter now, which is good. A money year for him. Luke's raised his average in the 240s, which is nice. It should be much higher than that, but he's got 14 home runs. So they've done some things. The offense is pretty good. They lost Tyler Daughtry, who Mike Martin Jr. had penciled in as the leadoff hitter this year. They still don't know who their leadoff hitter is. That's one thing that's odd. Is like the last 2 games it was Bornegal. Like they're literally into their 55 games into the season? Yeah, they don't know who the leadoff hitter.
What's wrong with Stephen Wells being the leadoff?
I guess he struggled too much for him, and they moved him back down. Maybe they wanted him more in the run producing role. He hit a home run too, by the way. I think everybody on the team hit at least one. But yeah, so they don't know who their leadoff hitter is. They still don't know really who the closer is. I think once they get in the postseason, they're going to have to figure out. I think Karp and Parrish are 2 guys they know are going to start games. And I guess Sands too. So then Van Eyck becomes your closer. and he needs to be a closer that can give you 3 innings, 2 or 3 innings. Like, I think that's where they'll get, because it does no good to bring in Scolaro over and over again. You know, you just can't do that. He's a guy that can get a few outs because he's tricky and he throws soft and he's got a great breaking stuff. But if you see it enough, you're going to sit on it because he throws 86. So you can start sitting on the off-speed stuff. So he's not a guy that I think you can run out multiple times in a series. And I'm just thinking about once they get to postseason. And so, you know, I think Van Eyck is the wild card because he's probably the most talented pitcher on the staff, not named injured Tyler Holton. So if you can get him to get into 2 games in a weekend and give you 4 innings total, then that's like having a 4th starter. But he can impact 2 different games. So I think that's where they go. Is Van Eyck is the guy, and then on offense, man, yeah, it's they certainly, I don't know where they are in the national ranks either, but I know they took a big old leap up with the bludgeoning of the Mount St. Mary's over the last 4 games.
You know their mascot,
the Mountaineers, which is I didn't know that until this week. And then, I mean, come on, man, that's not creative at all. The Mount St. Mary's Mountaineers.
Maybe like if we're
you already got Mount in the name to begin with.
It'd be like if we're the Statesmen, like Delta State. It's a small school in Mississippi in the Delta, and they're called in Cleveland, Mississippi. They're called the Delta State Statesmen.
Yeah, I don't like that. It doesn't roll off the tongue. The Mount St. Mary's Mountaineers. Come on, man. Let's be the Eagles or something.
Don't be the Eagles. What's it like in Georgia? Every school in Mississippi was either Tigers or Bulldogs was the mascot. It was just like, I don't know what they are. Just guess Tigers. Will probably be 50% of the chance you'll get it right.
You talking about high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton of Tigers and Panthers. And, it's Wildcats. A whole heaping of Wildcats.
Wildcats, all right.
But not a ton of Bulldogs,
really?
Which is odd. Yeah, I think maybe because it's so synonymous with the school, the university, that people stay away from it. I don't know. It seems like it'd be easier to get people to wear your school colors to games if you're the Bulldogs. But no, it's a lot of Wildcats and a lot of Tigers are everywhere, man. That's kind of crazy.
And no
how
Lions.
They just commandeered. Yeah. Why do Tigers? Lions and Bears are very rare. But Tigers, it's like every other high school is nicknamed the Tigers. Why did the Tigers commandeer the nickname? What makes them cooler than a lion?
Maybe we'll get to that in another episode of Wake Up Warchant later this week.
I hate having a cliffhanger like that, but come on, people. Help us out.
It's rating season right now, Cory. We got these people on the hook no matter what day we come back.
For sure.
Yeah. So, and again, there'll probably be some gaps in programming this week, at least on our end here on Wake Up Warchant. I'll be on the road with Michael Langston doing some recruiting, and maybe we'll do a podcast at least. And if you're not subscribed to the podcast and you listen to us on the radio, thank you for listening to us on the radio. But subscribe to the podcast. Usually, there's a little bit more, content, I guess you can say, on the podcast, and then obviously subscribe, unsubscribe, and then what, Cory? Resubscribe.
And then rate. Oh, then resubscribe.
Yeah. So you subscribe, and then you can rate it. And now since Cory's
rate and review,
yeah, 5 stars. And you had Ira. You had Ira like 3 times last week. Everybody, you had 5-star Chaffel. Be appreciative of the big guns that we bring on the show. So with that said, Cory and I will bid you adieu. We'll return at some point, probably this week. Cory's feeling better. So Cory, you want to share anything with people before we sign off?
I just want to let everybody know that I miss them. I hope they had a wonderful Mother's Day. And I'm so happy to be back with you guys. And I missed you. And there was like a hole in my heart that's now been filled now that I'm back on Wake Up Warchant. I love you all.
Warchant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. Warchant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WARCHANT30. Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.